G'day, how's it going? Shelfstein Photography here. Brought you a couple of videos of late. First one that I did was of the RAAF Base Richmond Airshow, just a quick video on taking you there on the day. Second one, the last one that I did was looking at the editing of one of the fast jets and one of the prop-driven planes from the day. So today I thought I'd take you through my top 26 photos from the RAAF Base Richmond Airshow, according to me. So let's have a look. First one we've got is the F-35A Lightning II. This was on static display. The camera settings for this particular photograph were focal length of 65 millimeters, aperture of 5, and a shutter speed of 1/100th of a second. Most of the static stuff I do is aperture priority. This one was. And I don't know, I just like this photo because of that gold canopy and the red tags that are in place, against that blue background. I think with all of that, this photograph just works. So that's the first. These are in no particular order, by the way. The second photo in the 26 is the EA-18G Growler, again on static display. This particular photo was taken at 40 millimeters, an aperture of 4.5, and a shutter speed of 1/200th of a second. And again, being a static display, I've got that on aperture priority. I just feel that this is the best looking plane in the RAAF and couldn't be left out of a top photograph list. I mean, the livery is just awesome. Throw in the LRASM in the foreground, and I think it just makes for a great shot. The third picture, I've got the C-130J Hercules doing a dirty pass. The camera settings for this one, 329 millimeters. We've got an aperture of 14 and a shutter speed of 1/160th of a second. Like most of the things I do that are airborne, I've gone to shutter priority for this particular picture. So I'm really happy with the sharpness of this photograph and the prop blur that's been captured. The wheels down and flaps down just add a little something compared to the usual Hercules picture that you get. Next picture is, again, the C-130J Hercules. Call this one Loadmasters. The camera settings for this one, focal length of 600 millimeters, aperture of 13, shutter speed of 1/160th of a second, and again, it's on shutter priority. I like this because it's a sharp picture with good prop blur. The sharpness of it, the prop blur alone makes it a great picture, but the Loadmasters just casually waving to the crowd from the ramp at the back of the plane, I think is what really makes the photograph for me. Then we've got the RFS Chinook, so the Royal Fire Service Chinook. And it's obviously doing a water dump there. The camera settings for this one, 500 millimeter focal length, an aperture of 22, and a shutter speed of 1/60th of a second. And of course, because it's in the air, I've gone for shutter priority. I like to try and shoot helicopters at pretty slow shutter speeds, usually anywhere between 1/100th of a second down to 1/30th of a second. In this photograph, I think apart from the fact that I was able to slow the shutter speed down to 1/60th of a second and still manage a sharp photograph, I think the demonstration of the helicopter's ability to dump water on a target just makes for a great shot. Moving on to the next, again, we've got the RFS Chinook. Call this one banking left. The camera settings for it are focal length 600 millimeters, aperture of 20, shutter speed of 1/80th of a second, and again, it's in shutter priority. So I like the way the blades on the Chinook look like they're about to collide, just in this middle section here. The blur on the rotors and the fact that it's leaning over in a left-hand turn give it a sense of movement that I find quite appealing. The next shot is of the North American Harvard, the CA16 Wirraway and the CT4A. They call it triple layered. The camera settings for this one, focal length of 600 millimeters, an aperture of 16, a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second, and it's in shutter priority. For me, the shutter speed is right in the sweet spot for propeller-driven planes. I tend to try to shoot these types of planes from between 1/200th of a second to 1/80th of a second. In this photograph, I really like the spacing of each aircraft. There's a decent prop blur. The light hitting it at a better angle would have helped enhance this. The prop blur and the fact that they look like they're climbing adds that essential element of movement. You can see if we had a bit more light hitting the propeller on the top one particularly, would have made for a better prop blur, but I do like it on the Wirraway. You can just see it on the Harvard there. And we move on to the RAAF roulettes. Pilatus PC21. I call this one solo. As you may know, the roulette's usually in formation, but I captured this guy all on his own. So the camera settings for it, 600 millimeters, aperture of 16, and a shutter speed of 1/160th of a second. And again, shutter priority. I just love the sense of speed in this photograph. You've got the prop blur, something that you may have noted by now is an important aspect in my book. Not essential, but certainly desirable. Teamed with the smoke trail as well as the aircraft looking like it's leaving the frame, I think works well in this photograph. Moving on to the E7A wedgetail. Again, a dirty pass. The camera settings for this one, 400 millimeters, aperture of 6.3, and a shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second. And again, I'm in shutter priority. I've upped the shutter speed because we've got a jet. There's no chance of capturing any prop blur. There's no ground to be seen, so you're not going to get that sense of movement out of slowing the shutter speed down. So in my opinion, I framed this wedgetail well in this photograph. It's tack sharp, shows the tail graphic nicely. And as with the C-130J photograph earlier, the gear and flaps being down, I think just adds some interest to the photo. Next one's moving on to the first of the fast jets. So I've got the F-35A Lightning II. I call this one Hello Crowd. The camera settings for this one, 600 millimeters, aperture of 6.3, and a shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second, and again, shutter priority. So this photograph is sharp enough to read the writing on the jet. Has some vortices trailing from the wings, and the upward attitude of the aircraft gives it that sense of speed. But I think the best part of this one has to be the fact that the pilot appears to be looking straight down the barrel of the camera. You can see his head, it's just turned, it looks like he's looking straight at you. Next one in the list, again, the F-35A Lightning II. I call this one banking left. Camera settings for this one, 600 millimeter, aperture is 7.1, and the shutter speed is 3200th of a second. And again, we're in shutter priority. Firstly, this has to be one of the sharpest pictures from the day. The writing on the aircraft is very clear. Being rolled over on its side and with the vortices trailing the wing edges, it gives that sense of speed. So I really like that sense of speed and just how clear the photo is. Next one in the list, the F-35A Lightning II again, another dirty pass here. The camera settings, focal length 600 millimeters, aperture 6.3, and 32 hundredths of a second shutter speed again. And again, we're in the shutter priority. So it's another very sharp photograph. It has two other main features for me. One, again, the pilot looks to be looking straight at the camera, and like the two previous dirty pass photographs, just having that landing gear down and the flaps down, I think makes for a great photograph. 13th in the list, again, the F-35A Lightning II. It's hard to go past the fast jets. They just look fantastic, I think. And I call this one Weapons Bay Check. The camera settings for this one, focal length 600 millimeters, aperture 7.1, and again 32 hundredths of a second for the shutter speed, and we're in shutter priority. Much like in the earlier banking left photograph, this one has that sense of speed from the attitude of the aircraft and the trailing vortices. However, this one has a little bonus with the weapons bay open to show the crowd its interior. So I really like that photograph there. Next, again, F-35A Lightning II. Call this one just going up. The camera settings for this one, 600mm again, aperture of 7.1, and up the shutter speed again to 4 thousandths of a second. And again, we're in shutter priority. So I really love the sharpness of this photograph, demonstrated by how clear the pilot in the cockpit is, and I think the vortices forming over the intakes enhances this particular photograph. Going to the next picture, and we have this time the C-27J Spartan. I call this one coming around. The camera settings, 600mm focal length. The aperture is 16, and we're 1/125th of a second shutter speed, and again shutter priority. So I really like the prop blur that's been created here. The angle of the aircraft as it turns, showing off its underside to the crowd, just gives that real sense of action and urgency, which I quite like. Next one again is the C-27J Spartan. Again, call this one Loadmasters. The camera settings, we've got focal length of 600mm, an aperture of 16, and 1/125th of a second shutter speed again. And again, we're in shutter priority. So much like the similar picture showing the C-130J's Loadmasters, I think you just have to appreciate the fact that you can clearly see the two Loadmasters just casually waving to the crowd from the ramp of the aircraft. Makes for a really great picture. The fact that it's got the landing gear and flaps down again also helps out as well. Moving on to the C-17A Globemaster 3. Call this one G'day down there. Camera settings, 600mm focal length, aperture of 6.3, and we've got a shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second, and we're in shutter priority. So there's a number of aspects I like about this photograph. It's tack sharp. It doesn't show the entire aircraft, which is something I like to do from time to time, and can be an effective way to photograph planes, particularly such large ones as this. And in this case, I definitely think it's an effective way to capture this particular aircraft. And lastly, we have another person looking straight down the barrel of the camera. So this crew person looking straight out the window, looking like it's looking straight down at my camera. Another one of the C-17A Globemaster 3, and again, got the Loadmasters. Camera settings for this one, 600mm, aperture of 6.3, 1/2000th per second shutter, and we're in shutter priority. I don't think I need to reiterate it, but just like the two that came before it, this one makes the top 26 because it is a sharp photograph with the bonus of the two Loadmasters casually sitting on the ramp and waving to the crowd. I mean, wouldn't you love to be them and to have that view straight out the back of that aircraft? Would be awesome. Moving on to another of the fast jets, the FA-18F Super Hornet. Call this one Light 'em Up. The camera settings, 600mm focal length, 6.3 aperture, and 1/2000th of a second shutter. And again, we're in shutter priority. It's slightly obvious why I chose this one. The timing of the photograph to capture the flares just after being deployed and the glow they provide on the bottom of the aircraft looks awesome in my opinion. The afterburners being engaged in the smoke trails from the two previous flares just add a little something to it as well. 20 on this list, again the FA-18F Super Hornet, call this one Afterburner. The camera settings, 600mm focal length, 7.1 aperture, 1/2000th of a second shutter, and again in shutter priority. And I love this photograph due to the contrast between the left side of the aircraft, which is, you can see sharp and clear, and then the right hand side, which is anything but, due to the heat haze from the engines, which are in afterburner mode. Let's face it, pretty much any jet in afterburner looks cool. Moving on to the next, again the FA-18F Super Hornet, call this one Turn and Burn. The camera settings, 600mm focal length, 6.3 aperture, and 1/2000th of a second for the shutter speed, and again shutter priority. Similar to the previous photograph, there's a contrast between sharp and blurred. This is the afterburner effect again, and to add to this, we've got the aircraft in a tight turn with the vortices being created over the wings. Like the afterburner effect, the vortices effect is also very cool in my opinion. Then we've again got the FA-18F Super Hornet, call this one Bat Out of Hell. The camera settings, focal length 600mm, aperture of 7.1, shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second, and we're in shutter priority. Another one that's likely obvious as to why I chose it, I have to admit the two fast jets on the day knew how to leave an airshow. They had flares popping and straight up in a hurry with full burn on. The multiple flares spewing from the aircraft look great. The various sparks flowing from the main light of the flares gives a little more interest in, I think. You see, look at those flares and the sparks coming off of it. Moving on to the P8A Poseidon. Call this one Here's Looking at You. The focal length is 600mm, the aperture 7.1, and we've got 1/2000th of a second shutter speed here with shutter priority being used. It's a nice tack sharp photograph, sharp enough to be able to read the writing on the door. Add to that the crew member looking down at the crowd from the window, and I think it makes for a rapture. And again, we've got the P8A Poseidon. I call this one showing its insides. Focal length on this one, 309mm. Aperture is 6.3, and again, our shutter speed is 1/2000th of a second, and we're in shutter priority. I like the angle of the aircraft for this one, and I like how clean and sharp it looks. I mean, this plane could have rolled off the production line that morning. It looks so clean. Add to that the showing off of the weapons bay and the accidental capture of the commercial jet, and it all combines to make a picture that appeals to me. Coming into the second last, our penultimate photograph, we've got the Hawk 127, call this one Fast and Low. We've got a 600mm focal length, aperture of 6.3, and the shutter speed is 2500th of a second, and we're in shutter priority. It's a sharp photograph that has a number of elements that I like. There's the accidental capture of a commercial jet, the subtle but unmistakable jet wash, and the angle of that aircraft, both suggesting speed. And then there's the livery. I really like the paint scheme, and it's quite visible in this photograph. And the final picture. We've got here again the Hawk 127. I call this one cleans up all right, and there's a good reason for that, and I'll just show you what I mean. Before I do though, the camera settings: 600mm focal length, 7.1 aperture, and 2500th of a second shutter speed. And again, we're in shutter priority. If I just bring up this, you can see there's the difference between the edited and the straight out of camera photo. So this is one of the sharpest photographs that I took on the day. The view into the cockpit is, it's just so clear. When you consider what it looked like out of the camera, you'd have never known there was such a good, clear photograph to be brought out. It definitely demonstrates the importance of shooting in RAW and editing, and really checking a photograph properly before writing it off and deleting it. Could have easily just looked at this one and gone, yeah, there's nothing there. But I didn't. I checked it out before and saw that there was possibly something there. And one of the ways I do that, particularly with the military aircraft from Australia, is I go in and I just see how clear the Kangaroo is. That usually gives me a good indication of whether or not it's going to be a clear photo or not, whether I can bring something out of it. So yeah, that's my top 26 photographs from the Richmond, or the RAAF Base Richmond Airshow. Hope you enjoyed a look at those, and like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of them, what you think of the videos, and head over to Facebook and look me up there or as Scholstein Photography, and give me a follow on there as well. All right, until next time, catch us later.